You sure about that?
Welcome to the Veterans Impact Show, where we continue the mission of highlighting veterans and service organizations who continue to serve our community and our nation. We're brought to you by Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Don't worry, retire happy. Welcome aboard. What a great day we've got. I got to tell you, this is really terrific. So I want to say a couple of special thank yous. Thank you to my wife, Diane, doing the social media, and to Nathaniel Smith with the podcasting, Ascend podcasting. Okay, I got to get that right. Also, we want to thank DVTV and the AUN network out in California for being part of this. We really love it. And please send us an email. Let us know, subscribe, be a part of this. It's a great opportunity to talk to veterans. Now, Chuck, you're a Marine, an outstanding Marine.
And I don't know if I'd go that far.
Well, you are in terms of all of the things you do in the community. But how does one Marine welcome another Marine?
Good morning, Sergeant Major.
Okay, well then, good morning, Sergeant Major. How about that? Let's welcome Lance Nutt, United States Marine Corps Sergeant Major, CEO and founder of Sheepdog Impact Assistance. Welcome aboard, buddy.
Good morning. Good to be here with you.
Thank you. Well, and what a great name, Sheepdog Impact. I'd asked you before that I'd heard that before from Major General Bob Scholes talking about sheepdog and how nobody wants to be around the sheepdog because they keep everybody confined and policed, but until they need them and the wolf comes, then everybody wants the sheepdog. So tell us a little bit about how you got your name and how you got started.
Yeah, we, it's good to hear that people are talking about, truly what a sheepdog is when it comes to protecting society. And we refer to our nation's sheepdogs, the veteran community, military men and women that are serving daily, and all of our first responders, law enforcement, fire and rescue, etc. They are society's protectors. They're the men and women willing to die for you and I on a daily basis, out there guarding that wall. And so for us as an organization, I had heard the term growing up in the military. I was surrounded by our nation's heroes, sheepdogs. And I heard that Vietnam era vets talk about it a lot, what defined, their type of breed, the type of men and women that were willing to serve when so few others, are willing to put the uniform on. And then a few years later, as I was in the Marine Corps myself, I was reading some of Lieutenant Colonel Grossman's books on killing, on combat, that talk about the sheepdog mindset and what type of man or woman is willing to run into a burning building when everyone else is sane enough to run out. What type of man or woman runs in the directions of shots being fired. And he ultimately used the same term to reference these men and women in a loving way of referring to them as sheepdogs. And you're right, the one thing that stands out is that the wolf and sheepdogs both have teeth, and those teeth are intimidating. So a lot of people look at sheepdogs as, men and women of violence and intimidation. But unfortunately, what they don't appreciate is that these men and women use those teeth for good. That's the difference. The wolf uses them for bad. That's the wolf defining, people that mean or intend to do us harm. And the sheepdog use their teeth for good. So it's men and women who are willing to use violence as a means to protect us. And so in 9/11 had happened recently. I was getting close to retirement, thinking about what was going to be the next phase in my life. And so in starting an organization that was going to be about assisting and helping men and women who were still serving or had served in the uniform, our nation's sheepdogs, I thought, what better way of defining what we as an organization were going to do than having an impactful assistance on our nation's sheepdogs. So impacting them in a positive way through the assistance we were going to provide really came up with the name Sheepdog Impact Assistance.
So I got to ask this question, but then I'd like you to talk about the mission of Sheepdog. Did the name come first, or did the organization come first?
The organization, right? The idea. And I think, a lot of business owners can appreciate that. You have an idea of what you want to do. Now it's what do you call it? And Sheepdog was actually the fourth name. And the first couple names I found out were already taken for other organizations. So Sheepdog wasn't. And in hindsight, without a doubt, it's a little bit of a God thing that the name that it was meant to be is the name that it is today.
Yep.
And we take pride in that.
So expand a little bit for somebody who doesn't know anything about Sheepdog, which was me before I met Yeti. Tell us what Sheepdog does. What is the purpose of the organization? How are you doing it?
You bet. Well, it's funny to see after 13 years now of what we started as and what we are today are very much the same, but very much different. I mean, we're the same in the intent, which is to assist our nation's sheepdogs, our nation's heroes, those men and women out there willing to sacrifice so much for us. So my concern coming out of the Marine Corps was the continued service aspect. How am I going to be able to continue giving back when that had truly defined my entire life? I grew up in the Marine Corps. I was serving. I ended up finishing with 30 years. And the concern was in seeing so many like-minded individuals leave the military and struggle with finding a way to continue giving their lives meaning and purpose. And so I thought, oh my Lord, what's going to happen to me? The Marine Corps has literally defined my entire life. So in shaping Sheepdog, it was about that. It was an opportunity to continue serving and so our initial mission parameters were disaster response. We wanted to have the opportunity to get fellow veterans and first responders up off the couch, giving them a continued sense of purpose and belonging in being part of an organization that was made up of them, so that they would have brothers and sisters that they could work side by side with, they had things in common with. And it was all about going out, and ultimately we said, let's put our M16s down and let's pick up chainsaws. It was disaster response at its finest, clearing debris and trees. And what ultimately it has morphed into today was appreciating that after a disaster mission, we would come home and we would feel anxious about wanting another disaster to happen so we could feel good about ourselves, right? It's like, I need something bad to happen to make myself feel whole. And that in itself had a little bit of a depressing intent that we didn't want our men and women feeling. So we started adding what we call today our outdoor adventure program. And that was about finding ways to continue getting up off that couch together through hunting, fishing, camping, hiking, skydiving, scuba diving. If I had a veteran come to us and say, I really want to get up and redefine myself by basket weaving underwater, we would put a scuba diving adventure together where you could learn how to basket weave underwater, right? So we did not limit ourselves in what it was that people challenged us to do. But finally, the piece that we always knew we were missing was the ability to send our men and women home after a powerful experience with us, whether disaster response or an outdoor adventure. It was always the same thing. Man, this was powerful. But now I've got to go back home and I've got to deal with life again. So you could take them on an excursion or give them purpose through disaster response missions, but the story was so often the same. They did not have the tools they needed to continue living a positive life, a life where they felt like they were in control. And about 5 years ago, I ran into Ken Falk and Josh Goldberg, founders of Boulder Crest Foundation, through the assistance and prodding of Senator Bozeman, one of Arkansas's fine senators. He said, I want us doing more for the men and women of this country. And I'd love for you to learn more about Warrior Path. So long story short, we now as an organization are one of the Boulder Crest Foundation and Avalon Action Alliance partners that provides warrior path training to veterans and first responders who are looking for a way to continue growing as individuals. And so whether through our 3 mission pillars, whether it's getting you up off the couch through an outdoor adventure, where we sprinkle some of that warrior path, post-traumatic growth magic in the language and the things that we teach, or giving you an opportunity to go on and learn more about that through Warrior Path, which is a 7-day intensive peer-on-peer training program that teaches these men and women how to truly live their best lives. And then that final piece where we started is also teaching the importance of continuing to give back, serving in your communities, whether it's through Sheepdog and our disaster missions, or volunteering at your church, coaching little league sports, you name it. You have to find ways to continue giving back in the communities that we live. And what better group of men and women to do that than our nation's sheepdogs?
Oh,
our
absolutely.
Nation's heroes, our nation's veterans and first responders.
Our show's motto is Charlie Mike, continue the mission. And that's one of the reasons we're having you on. Yours is one of the organizations that I think is more than a little bit under-recognized, but continuing this huge mission. And I love the way that you're approaching it. You're dealing with both sides, whether somebody already has problems, working them through a program. And that's what I was going to ask you to do, is talk a little bit about Warrior Path, what that is. And
yeah, absolutely. Look, you know, it's funny how life takes us in different directions. And, you know, coming out of the Marine Corps after 30 years, you know, I've seen it all, done it all in many ways, multiple combat tours. And what really launched this organization is the missing piece in sharing that. For me, coming home and thinking, hey, we've faced the worst of the worst. Now we get to come home and celebrate our successes, and in many ways celebrate the lives of the men and women that we've lost, right? They serving their country. But what I was not prepared for was the men and women that began to kill themselves after serving. And it just shocked me. And in many ways, I blamed myself. I thought when my Marines started killing themselves, Marines and sailors, I thought, well, what had I done wrong? How did I fail them as a leader? And so as I was struggling with that, more and more as our organization continued to grow, I dealt with it through anger, unfortunately. I got really angry. I got angry at the men and women that were killing themselves. I got angry at the Marine Corps for not doing a better to prepare them for transitioning out of the service. I got angry at our nation for not doing better. And so as I was personally struggling and knowing that our men and women needed more, I agreed to visit one of the Warrior Path locations through Boulder Crest. And I personally went out to their Arizona course location. And I went there as an observer. And the powerful moment for me came on day 2. As I'm going through the program and I think, oh, I'm just here to watch and learn. No, I learned that I was there for me. I learned that I needed it. And so the power of what Warrior Path did in changing my life through how I was taught to better appreciate, one, who I was as a warrior, but more importantly, the strengths of and the things that we needed and not feeling like a victim.
Well, Lance, these are so important. We're going to continue the conversation in a minute, but what is your website? How can people get a hold of you? And this is a national organization. So if I wanted to look it up in Philadelphia, if I wanted to look it up in Maryland, if I wanted to look it up in California, where would I go to find it? And we've posted the website, but for some people who are going to be looking at radio, they're not enjoying it quite as much. So
looking at radio.
Exactly. Yeah. So what is the website? Please tell us.
Happy to do so. So www.sheepdogia.org. And that's sheepdogia, all one word, .org. And they can learn all about us through our website.
I really appreciate that. And when we come back, we're going to continue this conversation, and I'm going to see if I can get some war stories out of a great Marine. This is the Veterans Impact Show. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show. And thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation. We've got Lance Nutt, United States Marine Corps retired. Now I'm surrounded by Marines. No bad deal, man. Let me tell you.
We're trying to elevate the quality of the show, man.
Well, not only that, but I've got all the protection I could ever want. You and Lance and Smith & Wesson, we've got it made. Lance, let's continue. Can you tell us maybe a story too about what you have experienced with the Warrior Path, or with what you're experiencing, and is this part of your continuum of care that you talk about in your website?
It really is. You know, the Warrior Path program deals with, intensive training. It's what we call peer-on-peer support training, where all of our Warrior Path guides that make up the program are themselves combat veterans and or first responders. And I add first responders because we consider our nation's first responders, law enforcement, fire and rescue, to be combat vets based on what they experience every day on the streets of America. And so the program itself is tailored to men and women in uniform who are experiencing trauma in the line of duty, right? Again, the service in our military. And so Warrior Path, that training is all about 7 days of intensive day on, stay on, peer training that teaches what we refer to as post-traumatic growth. From post-traumatic stress, trauma, which every human being experiences, can come post-traumatic growth. And it's learning how to, not in spite of, but because of your trauma, you can truly live a better life through what you've experienced. It's an opportunity to grow from the things that you've experienced in life and understanding how that can make you a better, stronger individual. So, that whether referring to and teaching about experiences of Holocaust victims, families that have lost young children, to what we experience in the line of duty in combat or on the streets of America as first responders, it's understanding that all human beings experience bad things. And so too many of our nation's veterans and first responders fall into this pit of self-pity and despair. And unfortunately, our country today, in many ways, teaches them that they're victims. And we're trying to counter that. We're working hard to teach our men and women that have served that they have so much to be proud of, that they truly are the best among us. And it's reminding them of the power of who they are as sheepdogs, and empowering them again to go out there and continue serving in such a powerful way. So I'm so proud of what we've done with the Warrior Path Partnership and the program that we teach here at our national headquarters in Northwest Arkansas and Southwest Missouri.
Now, how did you come to that location?
Well, my home state is Arkansas. And so I ended up on recruiting duty in Fayetteville, Arkansas, the home of the Arkansas Razorbacks, and knew and experiencing the greatness that is Northwest Arkansas. You've got Walmart headquarters here, Tyson, J.B. Hunt, just to name a few. Beautiful Ozark Mountains. I knew that when I retired, I would want to raise a family here. I ended up meeting the mother of my 3 beautiful children. And I had just gotten out of the Marine Corps off of recruiting duty and decided to pursue a civilian career here in Northwest Arkansas in marketing and advertising. And thought, okay, now's the time to appreciate making some money. And the power of 9/11 happened a year after I got out.
Oh, wow.
And as you can imagine, as a Marine, I could not get back in the Marine Corps fast enough. And having met the mother of my children, we agreed that even though I was going to be going back into the Corps and stationed all over the country again and deploying at that point in my career a lot, we decided to keep her and my children in Northwest Arkansas and allow them to grow up in a safe, well-balanced community. And so ultimately, when I retired, this is where I knew I would be. And so I decided to start and keep the organization headquartered here And ultimately, we have spread out across the country by keeping our roots in a really good central location here in the United States.
I couldn't think of a better, more beautiful place, and you're doing a lot of outdoor events, so that's a great place. Man, I got to tell you, what you do in disaster relief that I looked at in your website is truly amazing. And a young lady with a chainsaw, she's got a smile that is really great. Thank you for what you're doing, and let's continue this conversation as we talk about more about the sheepdog training and how this can help you out. You need it.
I do. Yeti keeps promising me, and I should throw that out real quick. So one of your directors is Yeti Jackson, another retired Marine, and he's a longtime friend of mine. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Joe's comments that he made. Just relax. I'm getting there. But Joe, we're going to talk about your remarks because there's a lot of truth to them.
And Joe in Jacksonville. Oops. Welcome back to the Veterans Impact Show. And thanks to our sponsors, Fairway Independent Mortgage and Lone Star Wealth Strategies. Now, let's continue this great conversation. What a great program. Thank you for pulling this together. You know, Marines always lead the way.
We try. We
Yeah.
certainly try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
If you want to get something done, find a Marine, find an E7 or an E8. I'm telling you, you've had that experience with a board full of generals. That's an inside joke. We'll talk about that later.
That's an inside joke.
But we've got one of our listeners, and I wanted to jump over to this, Sergeant Major. So I don't know if you can see it. Whoop, where'd we go? There we go. We all have our demons to fight. We feel alone in the battle. We turn to the VA for help and get none. And I'm going to defend the VA a little bit. The VA is a little bit overwhelmed, but there is truth to that statement. And this is where an organization like Sheepdog fills that void between the government sector and the private sector in accomplishing the mission. And I won't go down the tangent. Texas is trying to do some things to formally help that. But this is where you fit. This is where you fit in. This is where Sheepdog is one of the cogs in the machine. And what would you say to Joe, Sergeant Major?
Well, you're exactly right. The VA cannot and should not be considered, a fix-it-all for our nation's veterans. I mean, when it comes to medical care, they're probably a little above average, but when it comes to mental wellness, not in a space where I think they do their best.
Right.
And so, organizations like ours are really working hard to fill that gap when it comes to assisting our nation's, veterans with the mental wellness side of things. And again, I want to stress that we're not a mental health provider. We're not licensed in that capacity. This is a peer-on-peer support program that, the great for us is powerful. It is showing the types of results and dealing with the effects of post-traumatic stress that have been needed, in my opinion, for years and generations, and addressing and hitting it head on. And so again, as a veteran who has gone to the VA for a lot of help and assistance, I noted real quick that my mental well-being was not being served there the way my body, when it comes to the physical side, was being served.
Mm-hmm.
And so in finding Warrior Path and being able to facilitate bringing it to bear, it changed my life personally, as I shared. And we're able to witness the power of what it's doing in the lives of our men and women every day. And if I can share a quick story on that
Sure.
as an example, we had a young lady that came through the program a few months ago, and she had dealt with addiction most of her life after serving, a lot of pain and trauma in the military. And we teach the importance of your 3 to 5. Your 3 to 5 are those key 3 to 5 men and women in your life that are all about lifting you up. You can have 3 to 5 people that will drag you down, or you can have 3 to 5 people that lift you up. And my dad always used to say when I was little that, son, if you hang around crackheads, you're going to be a crackhead, right? And it might be a little crass in trying to explain. If you hang around people that don't care about you,
Yep.
don't want you to do well, that's what's going to happen. You're not going to do well. So this young lady comes in. She's been in a really bad place. And she says, I have to go home and I have to change who it is that I have in my life. I have to change my 3 to 5 into people who care about me. And we hear from her about three months later, and she writes us a letter towards the end of our continued programming that is for 3 months after you go through the initial 7 days. She says, I did it. I changed the people that are in my life for the better. But what was really hard is one of the people I had to kick out of my life was my mother. Now, the reason for that was her mother was her drug dealer. Her mother was her enabler when it came to encouraging that. And what you realize is her mother was in a bad place. Her mother was using drugs, and misery loves company. But what we found out just a few days ago is that her mother, for the first time in her life, is now in rehab. And so the impact of this young lady saying, Mom, you can no longer be a part of my life. I love you. I will always love you, but you are a toxin in my life. And so to hear the stories of where these men and women are realizing the importance of going back home and changing the way they live, changing the 3 to 5 in their life that are going to enable them to be better, stronger individuals is really powerful. So that's one of the key elements of how we stress the importance of changing your life. If you don't like where you're at in your life, then you've got to make the changes that put you in a better place, right? And that continuum of care of continuing to serve and find ways to get up off that couch on a daily basis are critical in improving your life. So I hope that makes sense, in realizing that an organization like ours is, and there are many out there trying to do their best, but the Avalon Action Alliance that we're a part of is truly committed to doing just that, filling that gap where the VA may not be able to do its best.
This is tremendously important. Diane and I are involved as instructors of Sea Cadets, and I watch Sea Cadets and I watch young Marines, and here's what I'm thinking, okay? And where I'm going with that is I wish we could involve something like this into the training of young people. I think that's so tremendously important. And you talked about the VA. I'm close friends with several people heavily involved in the VA at upper levels. And we have talked repeatedly about 87% of the medical problems we've got are brought about by your attitude, by in the mind, that we really got to fix these things you're talking about. And it's not something that an institution like the VA can do, or an institution like a hospital can do. It's where you've got to have a peer organization that does that. I think that's one of the success of any of your peer organizations, where it's alcohol abuse, drug abuse, whatever. Celebrate freedom. So I think this is tremendously important.
No, I absolutely agree with you, and I think this is, and the thought hit me as both of you were talking, have mentioned peer work, and I realized when you do alcohol rehab, drug rehab, it's not a one-on-one program. It's never a one-on-one program, and it's just, it seems like a blinding glimpse of the obvious, but it's the kind of thing you just don't think about. And that simple, just being so simple as replacing 3 toxic people in your life with 3 people that, worst case scenario, they're at least neutral to you, but they're not toxic. You're moving in a better direction. But hopefully 3 positive people.
I totally agree. And one of the things is, I'm a certified senior advisor. As you get older, what happens is we gravitate towards people we've known a long time, and many times those people are toxic.
Yep.
Talk about your grumpy old man, and there are days when I feel that way. I think it's important.
Stay off my lawn.
I think it's important. So let's again go back and give out the website and encourage people to go take a look at this. It's amazing. Your outdoor adventures, get up off the couch. Good Lord, Lance, you know how many times I've been in a senior's home and I say, get up off the couch, take that 32-ounce big gulp full of Dr. Pepper and sugar and put it away and get rid of the cigarettes and focus on health.
The website.
Yeah. So we put it up, the sheepdog ia.org, and that's for the people in radio who cannot see this.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, we're being real silly. One of the things that that we are getting close to is Memorial Day, and one of the things, and I will very quickly share my story. I got involved with Carry the Load, which is an organization that Sheepdog is a member of. And the mission of Carry the Load is to restore the true meaning of Memorial Day. And this has been a way, and I can't believe how cathartic it has been for me. And I'm going to date myself, Sergeant Major. I lost one of my TBS classmates in the barracks bombing in Beirut. And Carry the Load gave me a way to honor him. It gave me a way to keep his memory alive. And of course, the key question to Carry the Load is, who are you carrying? And Sergeant Major, I'm sad to say you probably got a list. And that's, but this is how we do that. But Carry the Load is also a way for people to get involved. And if you're near Dallas, you can come down to River-Sean Park and march with us. If you're not, we have 4 relays across the nation that are marching through all 48 of the contiguous U.S. States. We're still trying to figure out how to pull off that march from Hawaii to, I think what they need to do is put them on the deck of an LHA, and everybody can march and walk around the deck as the ship's going from Hawaii to San Diego. But that they said that was going to take a little too much work.
I've done that on an aircraft carrier. I'd just as soon, you know.
But let's talk a little bit about, and have we got the Carry the Load site? And is Carry the Load on your website, Lance? There we go. We've got the Carry the Load site up. So if you're listening to this and you want to support, join a team. And you'll notice Sheepdog has 17, 18 different teams. They're different, representing their different chapters around the country. But it's a great way to participate, even if you just do it virtually and get out and walk with us on Memorial Day. And I'll talk just a little bit at River-Sean Park. All the relays will meet in Dallas. So they will all come to Dallas, and then Sunday, I, along with 15 to 20,000 of my closest personal friends, are going to start a march. We're going to march around the what we call the Uptown area in Dallas, and then we are going to spend the next 20 hours and 23 minutes for 2023 marching on Katy Trail. And my wife and I get a big kick. We're up to, we think we've read about 150 of the placards. So I mentioned my TBS roommate, that's Woolly Bear. I still remember the first time I read Woolly Bear's placard, and they're up and down Katy Trail. And if you're not familiar with Katy Trail, it's really neat. It's part of the Rails to Trail system. So it's an old rail line that they have paved over, and now it's a walking trail. But having said it's older, it is covered by trees. And it's actually
it's very beautiful.
Very beautiful. But on all of the trees, each one has a placard. Each one shares a story.
Lance, let me ask you a question. I believe you have a local organization here. Are you guys going to have a tent? Because many organizations have a tent at Carry the Load in River-Sean Park. Do you know if you guys are going to have that where if people go, they could come up to Sheepdog and say, hey, I want to know more. I want to meet somebody. I want to join. Are you going to have a booth there or a tent?
Oh, yes. I mean, we even as a national office bring about 30 of our men and women from Northwest Arkansas down and participate. And so there'll probably be 50 to 60 of us minimum. They're working the tents. We actually are the organization that mans the chow hall there. So we'll have our tent where we're talking about our organization, but then we also work several of the tents there at the park. And this is one of our favorite events of the year. Yeah. The power of Memorial May and Carry the Load is all about reminding people of the true meaning of Memorial Day, right? It's it's not about hamburgers, hot dogs, and time on the lake. It's about remembering and celebrating the lives of the men and women that gave everything, quite literally gave their lives for us, right? And so you better believe it. We're going to be there strong. And I have 7 men that I served with that have placards there. So it's a powerful experience for me, especially when we hike and I find their placards on the trees and posts along the Katy Trail, but also in the closing ceremonies when they're bringing all of those placards back in, and to stand there and see their faces. One, I even get goosebumps now as I think about it, but the power of being reminded of their sacrifice and their families, reminds me of the importance, one, of what we do, but also the importance of remembering those men and women for everything that they've done for our great nation.
You just gave me an idea. Diane and I are going to our reunion of VA-163. We were the lead attack squadron flying A4s off the carriers in Vietnam. We lost 12 pilots and we had 5 POWs, including John McCain was one of our pilots. I think it would be great for us to organize our VA-163 group and get placards out there. So other organizations, other people, join us in being able to get out there and carry the load. When we come back, we want to talk about other opportunities and other things. And Lance, please stick around as we talk about Memorial Day coming up, because I want to talk about gunny golf before that because it supports. I want to talk about carry the load again. I want to talk about other things that are going on. So this is a really important weekend. We're really looking forward to it. Stay with us. Veterans Impact Show is here for you right now today. We've been talking about carry the load and how important that is to bring the memory back of why we're really doing Memorial Day, not hamburgers and beers and etc. I can't eat or drink.
Yeah, the one thing I want to say, and I know that was not the Sergeant Major's intent, we're not saying there's anything wrong with celebrating family, with taking a long weekend, watching the Indy 500. All we're saying is take a minute, even if it's just a minute in there, and remember what the real meaning of Memorial Day is and what's significant. And more importantly, talk to your kids about it. Talk to your grandkids about it. I know more than a few of our listeners are the ones that are raising grandkids, and grandkids and grandparents have a very special bond because they have a common enemy. Parents. It's a true story, and everybody laughs when I say that, but it's absolutely true. But nothing more powerful than the lessons your grandparents teach you. And one of those is to never forget. And as Sheepdog, not only includes its green side, red side, blue side. And I actually will be flying Memorial Day weekend, my green side, red side, blue side flag. Carry the load also honors not just our military, but also our first responders. And that's deeply important here in Dallas, where we had 5 officers gunned down over, and sadly, a former serviceman who clearly was, you can't be a mass killer and not have a mental health problem. That's just, you don't go kill people for no reason. But that hit Dallas really hard, and we're still feeling that.
That's happening across the nation. That hits everywhere. Let's talk about some other things. Nathaniel, can you put up this deal that was sent to me? A Memorial Day celebration. I know a lot of people in North Texas love horses, love being around horses. We're very familiar with eQuest. I am learning about this. This will be a great Memorial Day ceremony, Monday, May 29th from 12 to 1 o'clock. It's free to the public. Myers Park and Event Center right here in beautiful McKinney, Texas, where North Texas really shines. The other thing is look in your community. Go to the VFW, go to the American Legion, go to other veterans organizations and find events, find parades, find things that are going on that you can get involved in and that you can be a part of, and that you can, if you have children and grandchildren, take them.
Yep, absolutely. They
Participate.
They will love. So I'm going to throw one out. I have participated in on and off for 20 years. Frisco at 9 in the morning on Memorial Day morning.
Yeah.
Does a great ceremony. It's right at an hour. They keep the time really sharp, and then I'm going to hustle back down to River Shun Park. Lance, I don't know if you're going to actually carry one of your placards this year, but I'm going to talk about next week's guest, and he is somebody that you know, and that is Terry Burgess, who runs the Gold Star Family Retreat Program, who's another friend of the organization. Great guy. I'm honored to call him a friend, author of the book When Your Blue Star Turns Gold. And so there are so many organizations like this that are supported by Carry the Load, and absolutely a great organization. But as we continue that mission of restoring the true meaning of Memorial Day and getting people to remember it, because one of the problems we have is when I was growing up, everybody served. You just did that. And I'm a little bit older than the sergeant major and a lot uglier. So my sergeant major used to tell me that I was so ugly, I was cute.
I believe that.
But we had 20% of the American public, or especially of the men who had served who were veterans. Today, that number's down to 4%, and only 1% of the nation is serving. So that number is going to continue to shrink as the Vietnam era veterans pass on, as the Cold War era veterans start to pass on. That number is going to get smaller and smaller, and we lose sight of this.
We lose sight of the values. Well, Chuck, we're down to a minute. Let's close this with a prayer.
Oh, crap.
Lord God, King of the universe, we are so thankful to you for all of the wonderful things you do for us. You take care of us. We absolutely appreciate it. Thank you for the hedge of protection around all of our military and active duty responders, that you keep them safe. Thank you, God, for our veterans who lead the way in our communities and continue the mission and bring us together. Oh, Lord God, please help us bring this nation back together, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Amen.
Lance, thank you so much for being on. Look up Sheepdog.
Absolutely. Look up Memorial Day and join us in a great celebration.